Let's get started. Once more, welcome to our webinar on financial parenting. My name is Tillmann Lang. I'm one of the founders of Yova Impact Investing, and I would like to welcome you to the session tonight. Before we dive into the details, just to make you aware, we can see that many of you are online. We right now have 43 attendees, and we see a couple more still dialing in. But while we know that you're there and we can see your names and your numbers, we cannot actually see you or hear you. So in case you want to ask a question, which we very much encourage, please do so by using the tool that you have. So you have a box there that is labeled questions. And if you have any question, you can just type it in there and we will see it. And we will either get back to it when we can quickly by typing, or we also have blocked some time at the end of the seminar where we will pick up some of these questions and answer them here in the discussion. We'll also have a recording of the webinar, so if we're talking quicker than you can take notes, or if you just would like to relive it once more, you will get access to the recording tomorrow. So you can really focus on soaking in the information and enjoying tonight, because we have a very special guest. We're actually really excited to have Dr. Mara Harvey with us tonight. Dr. Harvey is an absolute expert on the topic of finance in general, sustainable finance more in particular, and especially when it comes to the topic of investing with kids, for kids, financial education, and all these kind of topics. And what's best is she's not only very knowledgeable about the topic, she's also very good at conveying it, which is not something that is to be taken lightly, because these are complex matters. So it's always important or great if somebody's not only able to make sense of these things, but also helps us to make sense of them. And we're very happy to have Mara with us today, because she's truly an inspiring speaker on the topic. We have one more person with us, that's Sabrina. She's from the Yova team, and she's helping us organize a bit in the background. She might also get back to you with one or two questions. And with the three of us, we're quite happy to talk to the by now 52 of you that are on the call online. And without further ado, I would like to hand over to Mara. Excellent, and then you'll see my face back again later. Enjoy the presentation by Mara.
Hello everybody, also welcome on my behalf. I just need to make sure that the slides are visible to everybody. If I could get a confirmation of that, that would be great, and then ready to go.
Yes, we can
Perfect.
see them well.
Thank you. So Tillmann, Sabrina, thank you very much for the kind invitation to join Yova seminar tonight. I really hope you will enjoy this content. I've prepared quite a few interesting questions for parents to reflect upon when it comes to teaching kids all about money. And indeed, we're going to start with a very first little poll, because we're going to discuss when is the right time to start talking about money to your kids. And for that, we would love to know the age range of the children that you have. So if you want to take part into the little poll that has just popped up in your screens, that would be wonderful. You can select more than one choice, of course, because you might have more than one child. So poll away. Oh, wonderful. We're already seeing, oh, fantastic. So we literally have all the age ranges, from very little still to primary school and through to secondary, and we have some teenagers as well. Wonderful. That's great. That helps me calibrate a little bit my messaging tonight, so that I can try to make sure we address all the points that are going to be relevant to parents across all age brackets. So let's dive right in. What does research tell us about how early money habits are formed? Well, the good news is that actually money habits are formed very early on, about by the age of 7. So what your kids will have learned about money by that age is really going to accompany them throughout their lives. Importantly, another angle of dealing with money has got to do with confidence. This is particularly true when it comes to little girls, and we'll be discussing that a little bit more later on, because it has to do with the confidence of asking what your value is if you are doing a chore or a job in the household. So confidence is super important, and that is shaped by the age of 5. And cause and effect is already understood at the age of 3. So the message really is the following. As soon as your children are old enough to understand that money should not be put in your mouth, it should not be stuck up your nose, and it's dangerous if you swallow it, that is already a good age to start imparting lessons about money. And most importantly, why is it important to start that early? Because money isn't just about a transmission of value and the monetary impact that you can have through transactions, but it really is a reflection of our values. And I think as parents, we always want our kids to grow up with very good values and strong values that we impart to them. So that's why money and values go hand in hand. So let's have a look a little bit what happens later on. So if we start talking to children about money very early, the age of 3, the age of 5, by the age of 7, what happens by the age of 10? Very sadly, there's a lot of research out there that shows that pay gaps actually are already visible by the age of 10. Girls get 10 to 30% less pocket money. Now, you might well be falling off your chairs hearing this, saying, well, come on, that can't be possible. No parent would ever discriminate their daughters. And indeed not. Yet collectively, it is happening. It's simply because all of the biases that we see in labor markets are visible throughout society. And girls tend to get steered towards those chores for which one receives less pocket money, and boys get steered towards those chores that are more valuable, or it's just because the boys are bolder and precisely have more confidence when it comes to talking about money, asking for pocket money, and the girls are a little bit on the shy side of life, or else are taught or they perceive through societal norms that talking about money is rude, and so you don't do it. And these are all stereotypes that we just have to break if we want our kids to really grow up being super financially confident. So, what I've been trying to do over the past few years is indeed that to create a new narrative around money. That's how I came to write a little book series for children where we talk about money openly. We talk about how you earn money. We talk about the fact that there's no reason that a little girl would earn less than a boy for the same chore that she's done equally well. And I think this is very important because you can't be what you cannot see. And so girls do need to know that there are pay gaps out there. Boys need to know that there are pay gaps out there. Both young girls and young boys need to be equipped with the skills that are going to bring them to the labor market on equal terms. And this is why I truly believe that it's a conversation that has to start very early on in life. But now let's come to the core of it. When I introduce pocket money to my child, how should I do this and what? What is the good way of doing this? And speaking to many parents here in Switzerland, I discovered that many parents choose to give their children pocket money when they start primary school. So, for example, a child might receive 1 franc a week in grade 1, 2 francs a week in grade 2, and so on. And so I really wanted to reflect on whether this is the best way to teach children how to manage money. And before we're going to proceed, I'd like to take a second little poll here. Sabrina, if you would be so kind to launch it. We'd like to know more about your pocket money habits with your children. Do you give them an allowance? Do you pay them chore by chore? Is it a mix of the two things? Share with us a little bit. So we've asked you actually to select only one of the following, but let's see which is the predominant form of pocket money that children receive.
It's Sabrina here. Hi, good evening, Mara. Before we continue the poll, we have an attendee saying that the sound is not loud enough. Maybe if you can adjust your microphone again.
I'm very sorry.
We can
hear you. A bit better?
I think that's better, yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll make sure it doesn't dangle on my shirt. I apologize for that. Yeah.
So the answers are now in.
So we are seeing about 73% of parents providing a fixed amount of pocket money per month and 27% giving money tied to chores. Okay, this is super interesting. Are you hearing me better? I just want to check this because if not, happy to make further adjustments if need be.
Yes, I think it's much better.
Okay, lovely. It's important that people can hear properly. Good. So let's look at these messages. So first and foremost, I'd like to decompose what we have here on the slide, which is the 1 franc a week, 2 francs a week in second grade, and so on. Why am I personally not a fan of this approach? Because let's decompose what it is that children are receiving as money messages through this kind of pocket money payment. We're basically telling them you're getting a franc a week, and it's a franc that you can spend on whatever you want, usually, right? You can spend it on your sweeties or and maybe saving a little bit for a toy, but essentially it's money for kids to enjoy. And we are teaching them that money is a gift because they don't necessarily have to work for it. We're teaching them that they can spend it on what they want, and we're teaching them that it correlates with age. And we're likely as parents to spend 5 years of their lives teaching them exactly these messages until they get to secondary school. And we try to teach them all the opposite, that money is not a gift. You have to work for it. Money cannot just be spent on everything that you'd like to spend it on. And money certainly is not going to continue to correlate with your age. And so I ask myself, why do we impart these messages in the wrong way so that we then have to decompose them afterwards and teach children all over again about good money messages? So one of the first things that I really wanted to leave you with as parents is it's not about what is right or wrong, but it is about really thinking deeply. What is your child learning? What are your children learning through the way you are giving them pocket money? And all of those money messages, whether they are explicit or implicit, are influencing their behaviors towards money as adults. So should I give an allowance or should I tie pocket money to chores? I'm a big fan of tying pocket money to chores for one reason and one reason only. It is a learning opportunity, and it is a learning opportunity that is going to be extremely important later on in life. And I'm not saying that we need to tie pocket money exclusively to chores. So even if you do choose to give your child a part of their pocket money as a fixed allowance, I would really encourage you to make sure that part of their pocket money is also tied to chores. I mentioned a little bit earlier the topic of confidence and why this is so important for girls in particular, but not only. Assigning chores to your child gives them the opportunity to learn how to earn money. It gives them the opportunity to discuss with you what chores might they be doing and what each chore is worth. And that skill to ask what something is worth and to negotiate with you as a parent is actually going to be a skill set for life, especially for girls who it's proven statistically, and I think we can all speak out of our own experience, are just not as good as the boys at negotiating their salary when they hit the labor market. And I think there's been research that has shown that to be an expert in anything, you would need 10,000 hours of practice. Well, 10,000 hours of practice is basically the equivalent of 13 years worth of negotiating at least an hour or two a day. So if you start with your 5-year-olds, that means by the time they're 18, they will be good negotiators. And this is the second message that I'd really, really like to leave with you, which is assigning chores to children is going to develop a skill set for life about talking about money that will really be important for their financial future. Now, of course, I'm not advocate of paying children every time they have to clear the table or put their clothes in the laundry basket or fold away their socks. But I do believe that we can select specific chores as parents that children can get engaged in, even little children, as of a very early age. And it could be simple things such as wiping the windows, or if you're washing the car, that they can help with a chore like that. And of course, as they get older, they can get on to more complex things like mowing the lawn, maybe if you have a garden. But the idea behind it is really to say, how can you as a parent select certain chores that become practice ground for your children to learn how to earn and how to negotiate? And of course, the concepts that children need to learn around money are numerous. We need to first and foremost impart the learning that earning money takes time. Now, this to us, of course, sounds obvious, but the notion of time and money is not an obvious one for a small child. However, there's one positive thing to be said about the COVID crisis, and that is that for many children, it's been the first time that they have seen their parents earning. They have seen their parents working, as opposed to mummy or daddy just leaving the house and saying, I'm going to work and I'm coming back later. They've actually seen you at home. They've seen you work. They might not have seen tangibly how much money you have earned for that work, but it is certainly a completely different experience during this COVID crisis that our children have had the privilege of experiencing due to the fact that we've all been working from home. So the next challenge is really, how do I make earning money visible to them? Is there a way that I could make it visible to them how much money I have earned by working all day? And if I can, even if I do it in a relatively playful way, that might be daddy hands mummy some money because she has earned it today, or mummy hands daddy some money because he has earned it today. But it is an opportunity to make a money moment visible to your child if you want to. And of course, the second learning is really about the fact that spending money takes no time whatsoever. And again, we all know this, but it really is something that we need our children to learn, that time and money go together very differently when it comes to earning it and when it comes to spending it. And they need to practice that. And for them to be able to practice it, they need to see it as well. And they need to understand that when money is spent, it's really gone. And this is going to bring me in a moment to the whole discussion around physical money and digital money. There's something difficult about handing over a coin or a banknote and actually giving it away. Whereas if you're just swiping and tapping on a screen, that emotional attachment to giving away something that was hard earned or that was gifted or that was received, but still you are actually parting with it physically, is an important learning in a child's money education journey as well. Clearly, we want to teach our children to spend wisely, and that is one of the topics that I've dedicated two of my books to, in terms of imparting to children the importance of understanding where your money goes after you've spent it. Who is actually receiving the money that you're spending? And how do we make that visible to our children as well? Certainly, the topic of safety, keeping money safe, is extremely important. A piggy bank is a good start, or a savings jar, but from there, explaining to children that that is not the safest way to keep their money. Bank account might be a much better option. Nobody can take it out of the bank account. You can't lose it. It's all there stored safely. And again, it's then about the experience of taking the child to the bank so that they can understand what a bank is, where a bank is. But in order to take that step, it's important to explain to children as well that money in a piggy bank can't grow. The piggy bank can fill up because you're putting more money in it, but as such, money in the piggy bank itself cannot grow. And we need to explain to children why it can't grow. I know the notion of interest is extremely difficult to explain, especially in a negative yield environment. That doesn't make anybody's lives easier. But the notion of interest is still the only way that we can explain how money grows over time and how that value of money can grow if your money is working for you instead of lying just in a piggy bank or in your piggy jar. So money has a cost, next important message. And this is going to be absolutely critical for children to understand when it comes to using debit cards later on in life, and especially using credit cards, that they understand that the same way that your money can earn more money for you through interest. Your money will cost you more interest if you are actually at the borrowing end of that. And so all of these skills, these 7 key messages around money, are really a skill set for life. And it's just so important that as parents, we take time to think about how we are making them visible to our children and allowing them to practice them very early on in life. And why am I so hung up on the savings topic? Well, it's relatively easy if you just look at it graphically without any consideration of compounding. Just for now, we're going to keep it just back of the envelope calculation, very, very simply. Our children are very likely to live beyond the age of 100 years old. And longevity is the biggest challenge that they're going to face if they are not equipped with the financial literacy skills that will get them through those 100 years. Concretely, what does it mean? Let's assume that our children who grow up in a country where we are privileged to have a very good education system will probably start working around the age of 20, 25 if they pursue their studies, maybe a little earlier if they do an apprenticeship. But for the sake of this calculation, let's just say they start working at the age of 20. And let's assume they're going to retire at the age of 70. And we could shift that back and forth a little bit. It might be that they start at the age of 25 if they go to university. It might be that they retire at 75 because by the time they will retire, the age of retirement will have gone up. But what is certain is that they're likely to live 25 to 30 years beyond their age of retirement. And we all know that our pension systems are already struggling today. Pension systems were born out of the early 20th century, the 1900s, and were made for a period in which life expectancy was maybe 5, maximum 10 years beyond retirement. They were not made for medical conditions that would allow people to live 20, 30 or more years after they retire. And so pension funds themselves will not enable people to sustain the quality of life after retirement. This would mean, again, simplifying completely, that roughly 30% of every penny our children earn throughout their entire working life would need to be set aside in order for them to have sufficient funds for their retirement. Again, just ballpark, back of the envelope. So the question I ask myself is, how do we teach children to save that systematically? How can we make sure that they already grow up with saving as a habit so that by the time they enter the labor market, they don't even need to question why they would save that much? And it is a huge amount to have to be saving if you want to really guarantee a good quality of life later on. And again, if you factor in compounding, maybe it's going to be a little bit less, and maybe you can accumulate more wealth by investing very smartly. That's what Tillmann and Sabrina can tell you all about afterwards. But here it's really about thinking, how do I get my kid to do this? I would say on autopilot and not have to struggle throughout their life with this topic. And I'd like to just bring it back to good habits start early. And I would argue that teaching a child to save should be like teaching it to brush its teeth. Before a child is even capable of understanding why it needs to brush its teeth, what caries are, what going to the dentist means, how much a dentist costs, before all of that, we already teach them how to brush their teeth and to do it 2 to 3 times a day. I think we should do the same thing with saving. I think as of the age of 3, we should give children little pieces of pocket money, not to spend, to put in their piggy bank every single day. They don't need to understand why, they just need to do it until it becomes a habit. And then as they grow and they learn actually what money is about and how to use money, and I can spend a little bit of my money, we can teach them that, okay, you maybe don't need to save every single penny you earn, but you need to at least save 3 out of 10 pennies that you earn. They should end up in your piggy bank and onto your bank account. And I think this way of imparting good money habits is really what financial literacy is all about. The earlier we start, the more it becomes a good habit. And as you saw at the beginning, adult habits are really shaped by the age of 7. So that window of opportunity between ages 4 and 7 is just an untapped opportunity that very often we don't really reflect on what we're teaching our kids. What do they see us do? And I would love to challenge all of you following this webinar right now to answer the following question. When was the last time your child saw you save? Because it might be that for some of you, your children have never seen you save. Because money is digital, because we all receive our salaries on a bank account and we no longer receive an envelope with money that we bring home like our grandparents did. And that absence of visibility of a behavior that for us is important and for them is crucial is what concerns me most. And this is my plea to all of you parents to just think about how can you make saving a lifelong habit for your child. So my advice is really start early as you can, and it's never too late to start. Try to make money moments visible to your children. If you can make earning visible, if you can make saving visible, and if you can make your spending choices and decisions visible to them, that will really help encourage their good habits. And making them talk about money, engaging them in talking openly about money is also a gift for life, especially for all the little girls out there. And yes, I believe we need to be disciplined, but we can also make it fun. So this was my endeavor, at least, with the children books on money, which are all written in rhymes, so that hopefully they're entertaining and hopefully the children will say, I want to read it again. And you are, at the end of the day, your children's most important role models in all money matters. So they'll be watching you, they'll be copying you. Before they even understand what money is, they will have already seen how you deal with money, or not, in case it's all just a tap and a swipe on your phones. And that is the biggest challenge if we think about the digital skills our children need. They will need to learn how to deal with money digitally. But it is so much easier to learn about that after you've had a physical experience with money than if your interaction with money is only digital. And so my hope is really with the books that I've written that we'll have a next generation of children that will associate money with equality, with ethics, with positive environmental impact, and no longer just with power, competition, and greed as in the past. If there's one thing we've learned from this whole COVID crisis is that the world does need a new thinking around how our economy can really become much more sustainable. And that's the journey that I'm trying to take children on with my books, because I said, if I teach them about money, I want to teach them about equality, but I also want to teach them that every single daily money choice they make impacts our world. And they can make smart choices. If they ask, the answers will come. Of that, I am sure. And last but not least, explaining to children about the Sustainable Development Goals is something that is very close to my heart. We know that the world has really big challenges, challenges that none of us can tackle alone, but collectively, all of our efforts matter. And so I thought, wouldn't it be fun if we could teach the children the Sustainable Development Goals as easily as we've taught them the alphabet? And so I wrote a little poem and the whole book around it, that with 26 letters to write every line, they're easy to learn when you read them in rhyme. And just like the alphabet, let's learn by heart our 17 SDGs. Come on, let's start. And I want to encourage parents and children alike to really think deeply about all the daily choices we make with our money and how we can do so much better if we set our minds to it. So this is my hope, to create a new narrative for a sustainable future, a future in which all of our money choices go to contribute to protecting nature, to supporting clean energy, to saving the oceans, to avoiding child labor, and just realizing and helping our kids to understand that every single day we're making choices, whether we make them consciously or not. And if we made them all consciously, we could have so much positive impact. Of that, I am sure. So that's the end of my presentation. I'll be very happy to open it up to questions, and I want to thank you all for your attention. And if anybody's in dire need of a last-minute Christmas present, I can recommend children's books. Thank you for listening.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mara. Very good. Yeah, I have to say, I have my two kids are still at the age where the risk is what you described, you know, is shoving the money up their noses is still a bit higher, but it's always a good reminder that, you know, these topics actually become learning topics much earlier than you think, whether you want them to or not, right? So even if you don't want to teach them, you're implicitly teaching your kids about money. So even just the awareness of that is very important. So again, thank you, Mara. To all the participants, Mara will be.
I have to say one thing. I'm terribly sorry because I wanted to make sure that we would also do a very last poll on savings account.
Go for it.
Can we go for that still?
Absolutely.
Because as we said, you know, money in a piggy bank really cannot grow. And so we wanted to take a little poll on how are we currently saving money for our children. And I think the poll is now live. You should see it. And it would be great if you'd let us know how you handle that. Wonderful. So we already have quite a lot of children who have their own savings account. That's great. And this is brilliant. Look at the number of kids that already have an investment account. So their money is working for them as they grow. I think that's fantastic. And we have a huge opportunity because about 28% of children still only have a piggy bank. No matter how young they are, this is a good opportunity to think about taking that little piggy bank with your child to the bank. So off you go.
Very cool. That's actually quite impressive. So 2/3 of the children, at least, of our audience tonight already have investment accounts. That's much more than we used to, and that's very good news. And that's, by the way, the perfect transition because we now want to transition to the topic to how actually to invest for your kids. And I want to tell you the Yova perspective to that. And to that, I need to start sharing my screen. For some reason, the button is not working. Sabrina, is there something I need to do? I need to change the presenter to myself. Very good. So I think you can now see my screen and hopefully me too. So I just want to tell you about how we think about investing for children at Yova. This on the page, by the way, is my now older son, Jonathan. This was briefly after he came onto this world 3 years ago, which is also only briefly after we started founding Yova. And the reason why we really think a lot about children is not me only personally because I have 2 small ones that keep me up at night in good and bad ways right now, but also simply because what we do has a lot to do with the thought of the future and children. So I have 2 kids now. They're 1 year old and 3 years old. In the first poll, we saw that many of you have kids basically across all the age ranges. And what all these kids have in common is that it's very likely for them to live in the next century, right? So it's very likely, if nothing really bad happens, that they will all be alive in the year 2100, 2100. And that's something that you have to sink in because often or pretty much always when we think about the future and when we talk about climate change in politics, in business, we think about timeframes such as 2030 or 2050. And that seems very far out for us. But if we just think about these children of yours and of ours, the year 2100 is actually very relevant. They'll be very much alive. They'll still be very healthy, quite probably, given that we have scientific progress like we have had in the past 100 years. So sustainability and children is actually a topic that, or when thinking about children, it really helps you remind yourself of the urgency of the sustainability topics that we see. And the sustainability is really at the heart of what we do with Yova. Yova stands for Your Values, and Yova is really founded on a very basic insight, and that is that every investment has an impact. So we've seen that today, 2/3 of the respondents say that their children actually have money in an investment account, another 2/3, or the same 2/3 in overlap in saving accounts. it's very important to understand that the financial system that we have is not at all isolated from the real world. Actually, quite the opposite. So if you look at how the world works, it's actually quite easy to realize that wherever you put your money, whether it's in a bank account or an investment product or some sort of stock, it always ends up financing something, because you're always handing the money over to somebody, and that certain somebody, whether that's a bank or a private person or somebody else, they will do something with that money. And most often they will finance a technology or a project or a business. Yeah, so that money ends up doing something. It has an impact on the real world. So the question, how do we live tomorrow, regardless of whether that's 2030 or 2050 or 2100, the question, how do we live tomorrow, has a lot to do with the question, how do we invest the money today? And that's the question that is at the center of what we do at Yova. Because Yova is basically starting with the question, what if everybody could invest money for a better tomorrow and a financial return? Because as we've just learned from Mara, it's very important to very early on learn about the concepts of money, and also to prepare yourself for the future, for your education, for whatever it may be, for a long and healthy and happy life. But it also has a lot to do with creating the world that we will live in, and especially that our children will live in. So what this question, investing for a better tomorrow and financial return, boils down to is the concept of impact investing. And impact investing, an impact investment is an investment that is designed for two objectives. The first one is the objective that has always been around for investments, and that's a financial return. But the second investment is it should make the world a better place by protecting the environment, by helping with societal issues such as human rights or such as injustice, such as, say, gender equality, for example. So it should make the world a better place in one of those areas, ideally in many of these areas. And that also means that the first objective, the financial return, is not even diminished by that. It actually means that you combine the two objectives. And that is also something that is something that you need to think about before you actually understand it. But once you start thinking about, it's quite intuitive. We sometimes get the question, if I want to improve the world, shouldn't I just, give money to charity? Why should I invest that money? And the answer is actually investing is a very powerful way to put the money in something good, because for two reasons. First of all, many ideas, many sustainability problems can be solved through technologies that are investment cases. Just think about renewable energy or even electric cars. But the other reason is that sustainability is actually a good lens to find good investment cases, because you want to invest in the companies that succeed if you want to have an impact. If you've invested money in an idea that doesn't succeed, then you don't have any sustainable impact. So that is what we offer with Yova. We offer a digital impact investing solution. For retail consumers is just a complicated way of saying everyday normal people, and not large organizations or the super rich. And we do that with a clear focus also for kids. So we actually offer a particular solution that makes it easy to invest money for your kids or even with your kids. And I would like to briefly show you what that looks like. And for that, I need to share a different screen with you. No, actually not this one. I had a 50-50 chance. It's this one. Yes, very good. So I want to briefly show you what that looks like. So it's very easy to do, and we really encourage you to try it out, because it's free and you're also not taking on any obligation. You can always change your mind. But if you want to become an impact investor, basically the only thing you have to do is sign up on yova.ch. I'll just do that with a mock-up account right now. And then what you can do is immediately at the very first point, interaction point, you can say, what are the kind of things that you care about for the future? So let's say renewable energy, sustainable forestry, maybe it's clean water, maybe it's pandemic control, so companies that produce vaccines, diagnostic technologies and all that. Maybe it's education, maybe it's gender equality, maybe it's climate change, and maybe it's also that you want to invest in a vegetarian portfolio. So you can decide. We do ask you a couple of questions. Obviously, how much money do you want to invest? whether that's 2,000, that is our starting volume, or something more than that. Whether you want to invest money regularly, you don't have to do that. You can also change it later. And we ask you some questions about your risk. When you do it, I encourage you to think about it a bit more than I have right now. Now I just want to try it out. And just like that, you can create an impact investing strategy. And that's actually a great way to show kids how investing works by doing this together with them. So we actually have quite a number of people that do what I just did together with their kids, because what you can now see is all the companies that you end up investing in and how they change the world for the better. So let's take this example, Vestas. Now, Vestas is a maker of wind turbines. So the next time you go down the highway, you can actually see the wind turbine, and you know that your money is actually contributing to this energy transition because you are a co-owner of this company. And if you're curious about the specifics of that, just reach out to us or join one of the other webinars. I don't want to get into too much detail with that, but what we do want to point out that whether or not you are already an impact investor, you can do that very easily with your kids. We actually have a solution that is optimized for kids. And that's when you have a Yova, once you have a Yova strategy, you can go to Yova for Kids. No, now I've logged out. That's bad luck. Give me please 10 seconds to do the two-factor authentication. 6834. Here we go. You can set up an account for your kids, a separate investment account for your kids right in your Yova dashboard. So now we have some loading delays, very good. Right here, you can actually see the tool that I have for my kids. And just here, you can start doing exactly what I just did. And if you have trouble with that, you can reach out to us. But this is actually a very good way to invest money for the long run in a way that not only creates a financial return for your children and for the future, but also makes sure that the investment creates the future that they want to live in, rather than financing the next fossil fuel platform or the next kind of organization that might actually endanger their future. So that's something that we feel very strongly about at Yova, that you invest money for your kids. That's why I'm so excited that 2/3 of you already have money in investment accounts, not only in saving accounts, and ideally try it out with a sustainable investment solution, whether that's Yova or another solution. As a token of appreciation for your time tonight, you can use this promo code for the next month to set up a Yova for Kids amount for free for the first 6 months. By the way, there's no obligation to continue after that. So if there's no lock-in. If you're not convinced, you can always leave again. We don't force you to stay. So it's fully flexible. You can fully try it out and see whether it works for you and your children. And you will get all the kind of information that you're seeking, such as how much CO2 am I actually saving, how much forest am I protecting, and so forth. As a last benefit, Mara mentioned her book. It's definitely a very good idea for a Christmas present. If you also want a shot at gifting it to yourself, Mara is actually helping our Christmas getaway with giving away some of her books. If you want to have a shot at getting a free book by Mara, just check out our Instagram or Facebook account this Wednesday, because we'll be giving away some free books that teach you or help you teach your children about finances firsthand in rhyme form, as we've said. And without further ado, I would like to open the last 15 minutes for the discussion. And for this, Mara, I would love to ask you to come back on the screen. Excellent, here you are. And what we'll do is we have quite a number of questions in the chat, and I'll make sure that we start asking the right ones, and then I'll ask you to answer as many as we can. Let's see how far we get within the next.
I'll do my best.
Very good. So we have one question that actually came quite early in the presentation when you were doing the first poll, and the question was, I'll read it out. We give coins every day to our 2-year-old to put into her piggy bank with the intention to cultivate the habit of saving. She receives the money without having to do anything. Would you advise us to make her earn it, e.g. do simple chores, behave well? So I think you've answered the question in general, Mara. How do you, what is your advice for a 2-year-old that may not actually do chores yet?
No, 2-year-old is certainly very early, right? And there it's more about paying attention that they don't stick the pennies up their nose or something silly or swallow them. but definitely cultivating that habit of putting the money into the piggy bank as a ritual, as a routine, is really to be encouraged. I think it's only beyond the age of 3, 3.5, depending on on the child's development, that a child starts to understand cause and effect. So it's really only at that age that they can understand, if they do something, then there will be a consequence. And it's at that age that we can start to introduce the idea that pennies can be earned.
Okay, very good. Very good. So my older one is 3. I actually have to catch up then.
Excellent.
Very good.
Something to do for the holidays.
Yes, finally. Very good. The next question comes from Evelina. When our children receive their allowance, they must put 50% in savings and the rest they can theoretically spend. And our 10-year-old daughter saves all her money, whilst our 6-year-old son spends it right away. Is this a problem? Should they learn how to spend?
Oh, that is fascinating, actually. That's very, very interesting indeed. So well done to you, first and foremost, for encouraging a 50% saving rate with your kids. I am in deep admiration. Keep going. That is wonderful news. Look, I hear about it all the time that parents say, I've got 2 kids and they have completely different attitudes to money. One is just like saving, 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 and the other is spending it the minute they've got it in their fingers, it's gone. I think that different children, of course, have different personalities and they will have different ways of learning about money. I am sure that even your son, who is very keen to spend everything, if he understands what he might be saving up his money for in future, if he has a bigger saving goal, that he will also feel more motivated to set pennies aside and not spend them just on a daily basis. But maybe he doesn't quite have that bigger goal in sight yet. So also helping children to learn about just saving money, even if it's just for a week, not spending it today, but maybe we'll spend it next week. And that way, if you break down the allowance, for example, instead of giving it monthly, you give it weekly in little chunks. It allows them to save even their spending part, right? Even the 50% that they're allowed to save, sorry, the 50% that they're allowed to spend can be saved for a short period of time, because they might say, well, if I spend it this week, I can maybe only spend 5 francs, but if I spend it next week, I can spend this week's and next week's money. And that is also a way of encouraging children to understand the dynamics of saving and spending. I hope that answers the question.
The next question is actually one that I've also asked myself. It comes from Brigitte. What about increasing the general household chores expected with increasing allowance and then pay extra for extra chores? So I was wondering about that. Could you actually, post job postings where you say, if you want to make some extra money, wash the car or something like that?
Absolutely. Why not? Look, I just familiarized relatively recently with a lovely concept here in Switzerland that is called Jugendlohn, where actually they start giving teenagers pocket money, not just in the form of money that they're allowed to spend on what they want or that they should save for bigger goals, but actually pocket money that includes a certain amount for things that the children actually need and that parents would usually pay for, be it clothes, or could be other items, could also be some food if they want to go out and eat their pizza or whatever. And it actually is a very well developed concept to encourage children, and especially teenagers who are very prone to thinking, just because of what they see on social media, that everybody else has the latest Gucci's and the latest Pradas and the latest whatever brand that is fashionable at the moment, and to sensibilize them as to what it means to be able to spend money on luxury items and beyond. And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we really face with kids today. How to really motivate them to want to earn their money. So yes, introducing more chores as the children get older. You can do a little post board, job board on your fridge, right? You can post the chores that you want done, make your life a little simpler and have the kids contribute. It can be fun. I think as long as it doesn't become an emotional burden for the children, it can encourage their learning. So that's a fine balance to strike.
Okay, very good. Very good. And it seems like that could be a good deal for the parents too, apart from the learning
Exactly.
experience.
Delegation skills.
Very good. The next question comes from Adeline. We open a savings account for our child since her birth. Gift monies from family have always been put into it. At what age would you advise us to involve her in actively managing her bank account, and how?
Okay. Oh, that's a very hard question, actually. So I would definitely involve the child relatively early on in putting more money into the bank account. Because again, it's about making it visible to the child, right? So if your child has a piggy bank and saves 50% of their allowance, and at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter or twice a year, whatever might be the right frequency, you take the child to the bank so they know I have a bank account in the bank. I can actually go and fill my bank account, and that the child, in due course is allowed to have an overview of how much they have paid into the account. And there one can debate, do they need to know how much money you've paid into the account or other people have paid into the account? I don't think that is a necessity for a very small child, but I would probably say if a child is in secondary school, they're probably old enough to really have started to understand the value of money and what 100 francs is worth versus what 10 francs is worth. And, if you're telling them what amount they have in total on their bank account, can they even grasp that notion? And then I would say into their teenage years, that dialogue should accompany them. I think what is most important is the dialogue around money should grow, it should feel comfortable. And it will depend a lot on your child's attitude towards money, because if your child is indeed a spender who just thinks about, oh my goodness, as soon as I've got some pocket money, I can just go spend it all, maybe you want to hold back on the transparency. But if your child is already in their early teens a good saver and has got good money habits and isn't driven by the social pressure to just spend it all on things that we don't really need, then I think you can certainly tell them more about the money that has been saved for their future.
Okay, very good. So the next question is about investment accounts versus insurance policies. Is it better to have an insurance policy where we can invest money for the next 15 years and collect money and have a better return, or to go for an investment account? And
Look,
I mean,
I can't really opine on specific investment products, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to pass on that question. But I'm sure that if you sit down with whoever your client advisor might be or your banker, they can certainly give you all the pros and cons of the different approaches.
okay,
I
very
think
good.
certainly if you're investing your money versus just an insurance policy, you have a direct control on the impact that your money can have.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I actually wanted to offer an opinion, which is, I mean, obviously biased as the founder of Yova, of an investment company. But we often get this question too, and in our answers, typically, first of all, what Mara mentioned last is very important. If you want to somehow control what the money does, it's very difficult with any kind of collective scheme, such as insurance, unless you're really convinced about by the provider and their approach. But also, in terms of the return, it's not such that an investment account or investment solution actually gives you lower returns than an insurance policy by definition. Often it can actually be quite the opposite if you account for a lot of the costs that are not really labeled transparently in insurance products. That again is in a whole webinar in itself, and I think if you want to, I mean, my opinion obviously is biased here, but it is based on research, not on the Yova research, and I encourage you to do what Mara did to talk to the people that have an overview, and I have a good feeling that they might actually, confirm what I just mentioned. We have another question. I'm a teacher. What would be a good idea to teach to my pupils age 7 to 9?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. I was asked so many times about whether I would plan, for example, to distribute my books in schools. And I said, on the one hand, I would love to, but on the other hand, I must imagine that it is very hard for teachers to talk about money to children And at the risk of the child going home to their parent in the evening and saying, you know, I want to be paid for chores at home. And that might open a whole can of worms that the parents are not ready to engage in. So my advice would simply be the following, to say, financial literacy, in my view, is an absolute must. We need to get this back into school curriculums everywhere. And I'm actually getting quite engaged also on that front as well, to say, how can we make this mainstream education for children, because it is too important for their future. But in order to do that, and I do know that there are financial literacy modules for children. They've been piloted in Switzerland. I'm not an expert on the, I would say, the pedagogic side of teaching this beyond storytelling and practicing good habits at home, because I'm sure there's also a science as to how you educate children properly on these matters. But I would certainly encourage it. I think as a teacher, it could be great, and also maybe in the context of doing a pilot in the school, also with the parents' consent and interest, to say, can we find ways of having a dialogue around money that don't create any direct, I would say, social conflict between the children, because talking about pocket money at that age can also be a difficult topic if some children get pocket money and other children don't get pocket money. So I would probably advise that the best route is first through the parents, who would, agree to want to engage with the children on these topics in class. And I do believe that there are then sufficient materials that can be sourced. And if you do need any tips on that matter, as I said, I'm not an expert myself, but I can certainly connect you to people who know more about it than I do.
Very good. There's a very interesting question by Julien. How do you keep the rest of the family from spoiling your kids? So you might have the greatest concepts and insights on teaching your children, and then everybody else comes along and gives free plastic stuff.
Yeah. Oh, that's a hard one. It's true. That's not easy to do. Let's put it this way. I'm a big believer in the fact that despite the fact that all of our children will hit a period in their life where they don't want to be anything like their parents, at the end of the day, we are all very much like our parents. So if your children will have grown up with you as a role model, with good money habits, with a balanced approach to money, with an open dialogue, I think, there's nothing bad about being spoiled if you appreciate the value of what other people are gifting you. And if other people are gifting your children things that are not aligned with your values, so for example, plastic toys and more plastic on this planet that we really don't want, I think there's a conversation to be had about whether gifting can go hand in hand with sustainability. I think it really is about a child appreciating the value of something, because indeed, if a child has learned to earn their pocket money, if a child has to work to earn 10 francs, they will value that 50 franc note that they might get on their birthday from the grandparents completely differently than if they have never had to earn their own pocket money themselves.
Very good. Excellent. I think we've reached the end of our time. So thank you, everyone, for choosing to spend the last hour with us. Thank you for joining the conversation. We actually have a lot of thank you notes now, also in the questions panel. So Mara, these are for you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and experience.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been an absolute delight to talk to you tonight.
Excellent. No, we really, really appreciate it. If you do have more questions that we weren't able to answer now, please feel free to shoot them over to info@yova.ch, and we'll try to pick them up. And what we can assure you is that investing for parents will actually be one of our topics that we want to share a lot more expertise together with our friends and partners in the next year. So if this is something that is interesting to you, then we invite you to become part of the Yova movement and network by following us on social media or signing up, creating an investment strategy. We'll make sure to keep you informed, and then we'll love to see you again. Until then, stay healthy, stay safe, look after each other, and teach your children about money. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.